channel again in our Growth Marketing for Strategy series with my co-host over there, Claire. It's over there, but you've probably got them on a different page.
You're over.
Yeah, exactly. It never quite looks that way. And of course, our guest today is Billy McDermott, because we're going to talk about GDPR, because you haven't had a webinar about GDPR before this year. So thought we'd bring another one in, but you haven't had one with Billy and Claire on the panel before. So frankly, if there's one webinar that you're going to watch about GDPR, you've only got one left to watch, this is the one to watch, because these guys are going to be brilliant. We're going to try and focus on the stuff that needs to happen, the things that we need to consider. Please post your questions about where your worries and questions are around this. And we're also going to spend some time looking at the future, the opportunities that arise from it as well. I'm from Amsterdam. This is we're the three things. We're in Amsterdam, Scotland, and England today. So we're very, very multicultural. I'm at a conference, Digital HR Summit. So anybody who's in Amsterdam, the Digital HR Summit, say hello tomorrow. So look, quick mention to Candidate ID, because Candidate ID is our sponsor of this. I don't have a banner behind me, but Billy does, because Billy works for Candidate ID. Candidate ID is the world's first dedicated talent pipelining software. Brilliant tool for automatedly marketing to your talent segments and tracking them as they go through the funnel, and knowing who should be hiring, who shouldn't be hiring, basically, who should be talking about. Ben, stop bragging about bragging for lead rise to content. I think that's Ben. Is that Ben Gledhill? But thanks, Ben. And Animal hasn't had a moan at this yet, so that's a good start. I had to go at my hair last time. Is my hair okay, Adam? But, okay, so look, without too much further ado, because that would be wasting our time, we're going to try and keep this to 45 minutes as ever. Let me do a quick introduction to Billy McDermott. Billy's worked in recruitment marketing, the same as Claire, both worked in recruitment marketing for a long time now, but Billy's role now is head of client success at Candidate ID, and by default, that despite whatever it means he's done before, means he has to know an enormous amount about the GDPR and how it impacts recruitment marketing, because of course that's central to the way that Candidate ID successfully works. So look, let's kick into GDPR. Billy, first question: should we all run and panic and move to another country?
Everyone should hide under a rock and come back when Brexit happens. Ultimately, let's ignore the ambulance chasers. Let's ignore all the prospective negative publicity that's going to come in, and let's look at this realistically here. The ICO, the Information Commissioner's Office in the UK, who are the data police in the UK. Now, there will be different ones depending on what part of Europe you're part of, but in the UK, the ICO have come out and said, look, this isn't about enforcement. This is about guidance. This is about providing training, and providing you with support. So if you get it wrong, first time, then that's okay. You're allowed to get things wrong. What you're not allowed to do is excuse my slight French here, rip the piss. You're not allowed to get it repeatedly wrong. You're not allowed to make massive abuses of the legislation, and you're not allowed to move away from the spirit of legislation. So I think it's not as big a deal as what it's been made out to be over the past 9 to 12 months. I've been working on GDPR for nearly a year now, but what it is A, something that you need to look at and respect, and B, something that as recruiters can give you a massive competitive advantage if you deal with it in the right way.
Makes loads of sense. And let's look at it from the journey of a recruiter's perspective before we go too much into the marketing stuff, although it relates to the marketing part massively. Our job is so much about the collection of information, and from we've talked briefly about it beforehand, and you can certainly bring your thoughts on this, but from the whole point of sourcing, identification, sourcing, talent mapping, talent segmentation, marketing, etc. What are the bits that are going to change? What are the core areas of what we do now that will have to change as far as you're concerned? What have we got to eliminate? Is there anything to eliminate?
Yeah. I think there's going to be a couple of things that are going to need to change. So the first thing, let's think about existing candidates that you have on, whatever type of system that you have. And remember, by the way, that data protection legislation, and this isn't a new thing, this has always been the case, covers not just what you think is on your CRM or on an ATS or on a spreadsheet. It covers, all your Word documents. It covers all your paper documents that are in your filing cabinets and the office. It covers all those piles of CVs, all your recruiters that I know that you've got in your drawers underneath your desks. It covers what's on your mobile phone. It covers everything. Okay, so the scope is absolutely huge. But from a practical perspective, for us as recruiters, what it means is for your existing candidates that you actually hold, that you have on your CRM, you need to be talking to them more. You need to be engaging with them, because you need to be telling them about your privacy policy. You need to be giving them a copy of the privacy policy and let them see it and be completely transparent about it. You need to be giving them the opportunity to withdraw consent or object to parts of how their data is being processed. You need to give them the ability to say, I would like to receive one bit of information but not the other. And you also need to give them the ability to say what channel they want to receive information by. So actually there isn't any, it's no longer a one catch-all situation where you can agree to receive all this type of information by all the different channels. You need to be a little bit more specific about it, and you need to be a little bit more granular about it. So first of all, communication with all your existing candidates. That's the massive thing that we should have all been doing. We haven't been doing. We now need to be doing it. The second thing is new candidates and how we treat new candidates now, and this will come down to whether there's you've got a gold standard, a silver standard, or a bronze standard approach to risk within your business. If you're gathering new candidates from, say, job boards, CV databases, and that type of thing, you need to be working with those job boards to make sure that their terms and conditions reflect the fact that you, as a recruiter, could be then processing that information. So that's the first thing. LinkedIn, if you look at that for a second, you're to be honest, there's nothing you need to worry about from a LinkedIn perspective, as their terms and conditions cover the usage of data within LinkedIn. So if you're contacting candidates on LinkedIn on any of the packages, whether that's free, Sales Nav, Recruiter, whatever it is, then you're covered from that perspective. But as soon as you take data away from LinkedIn and you start to process it on something else, whether that's a spreadsheet or whether that's your CRM or candidate ID for that matter, then your obligations change. You become a data controller as opposed to just leaving that responsibility with LinkedIn.
Yeah.
As soon as you take candidates from a CV database or take them from LinkedIn, then you've then got a choice. Now the spirit of the legislation, in fact, what the legislation explicitly says, that if you're processing the information of a data subject for the first time, in our context as recruiters, that means we're using that information for recruitment purposes, then you should notify that candidate within 30 days that you're doing so. So that's the letter of the law. Now, and a lot of organizations, and including clients of ours, absolutely, are going down that route. They're telling people that their data is being processed within 30 days. There is, however, a realistic element to it that the ICO are looking at, which is, actually, if you're mapping out, say, candidate, doing a talent map for a client, okay, so you're doing that initial research piece. If you're mapping out, say, every software developer that lives in Lincoln, for example, on behalf of a client, if the information that you're capturing is minimal, you're talking about first name, last name, a LinkedIn profile, and an email address potentially. If you're talking about, having a reasonably high volume of data there, then the expectation from the ICO is, of course, you treat that data securely and you treat it in a way that means it's going to minimize the risk of any breach. But do you actually need to process, i.e. contact that candidate until you're going to use that information for other than just a mapping exercise. Actually, some of the guidance says no, that from lawyers and from consultants says, no, you just have to be reasonable about how you're handling that. Once you then decide to use that mapping data for a hiring decision, i.e. you're starting to go from long list to short list to submittals, then yes, absolutely, you need to be looking at it, and you need to be contacting the candidates and letting them know what's going on. Can I just fit one more point on that, Claire? But what it comes down to on that is about reasonableness, and about how much damage is it potentially going to do to a candidate if that data is breached. It's limited information that's happening. If that data is breached or given to someone else, then is it going to cause that candidate undue distress? Is it going to cause them any real potential issue? Probably not. However, one last thing before we go to Claire's question is that if you are handing that data to a third party, then you do need to have consent before you do that, and it has to be consent. Legitimate interest to hand that candidate information over to a third party isn't sufficient. You need to have that consent, right? Sorry, Claire.
No problem. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your train of thought. Because it is massive. I mean, obviously, I've done my own initial research around this as well, but the 12 different areas that the GDPR covers is extensively covered. And to Alan's question around the guidance, everything is available on the ICO website. So if you wanted to head there is loads and loads of links to all the documentation and all the sort of latest thought leadership stuff there. Besides, obviously, Billy's just done the most amazing playbook as well, which you can get from Candidate ID, their site. And is available. I think probably Billy we can put it up on the link after the session. But just to kind of rewind a little bit, because you started talking about the data that we've already got within our CRMs and our systems right now. Like maybe even last year when I started looking at GDPR around the data that we held in Bullhorn, or even Broadbean's kind of capabilities, we were starting to look at that whole sort of audit trail. Like, how did the data come into the system in the first place? Is it really relevant for agencies right now to go back over the 100,000 plus contacts that they've got somewhere stored, whether it's, paper version or digital version, and actually start to kind of look at how did they get hold of that contact detail in the first place, and what the level of engagement is with those candidates? Is that really relevant for where an organization is right now? So say this is day one of my discovery for GDPR. Do I need to trawl back through those contacts and engage with them, re-engage with them, and tell people that I've got their details and their CV? Or should I wait until I've got a job and just do that sort of sorting, sifting, tagging, and then talk to people once I've got a relevant vacancy for them?
Really good point. I would just want to go back to something Alan said, just to clarify. What I said there was, this is the advice that we receive from our consultants and from our lawyers. Okay, so and so to caveat everything that we're saying today, you need to be seeking external advice on this. Please use this webinar as guidance to get you thinking about things, but you should always validate this information with a professional, with your own professional, as opposed to relying on us. This is our interpretation based on what we've been told by a lawyer.
There's no lawyers here.
Liability wave.
Caveat.
Yeah. So to get back to Claire, really good, valid point. And again, what this comes down to is what you think is going to be a gold standard, silver standard, bronze standard approach, and what your organization's appetite to risk is going to be. If it was me, and if I was in my, if I had my agency hat on for example, then I would be looking at what's first of all going to be the risky data. Okay, so naturally, most agencies that I know will be holding and processing far more data than they actually need. So you can immediately do a cut. You can immediately get rid of candidates who haven't been contacted in a long time. You can immediately get rid of candidates who you have got old email addresses for. For example, get rid of all the Blue Yonder and CompuServe and all those free serve email addresses that make up a lot of the.
Nice.
You can get rid of people who you don't have any email addresses for at all, or you don't hold any mobile numbers for even. So you can immediately, and agencies I speak to, it really depends, but that's probably going to get rid of anywhere between 30-35%, and in some cases 75% of your database. It's stuff we shouldn't be holding anyway, guys. It's stuff we should be getting rid of. So
yeah, Colin just asked how long's a long time, and I suppose that's like literally how long is a piece of string. And I kind of always say it goes back to your own internal processes. Like if you're a real niche player and you know your community really well, then that very small candidate pool you'll be highly engaged with, and they'll be constantly talking to you and telling you where they're at in terms of their career and placements. And you might want to be touching in with them every 18 months, every 12 months, connecting and just seeing where they're at. Whereas if it's a very fast-paced kind of environment and you're working contract or temp kind of side of things, then you want to be talking weeks because things change so quickly, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, there's no, certainly for a number of years, there probably hasn't been any excuse, Claire, to not keep in touch with candidates, even in some automated way. So yeah, you want to. This is part of my frustration sometimes, because we encourage recruiters both in-house and agency to speak to too many people, to speak to huge pools of candidates. As soon as you get above even a number, I mean, probably, well, it depends on your market, right? But the total addressable market for the type of roles that you work on is always going to be smaller than what you actually think it is. What you need to do is size your market, get it to a position where you can realistically sit and go, yeah, I can contact these individuals probably personally once every 3 months, but certainly at scale, be able to keep in touch with them once a month. And that's your, per recruiter, that's your for me, your ideal scenario. If you have a talent pool that you can't engage with in that way, then your talent pool is too big, as far as I'm concerned. And you need to do a market sizing, and you need to rein that back in.
And I know people tend to ask quite a lot of another question around the how long is too long thing, but is that what it's down to the agencies themselves and recruitment teams themselves to decide how long is a reasonable amount of time to have not contacted a candidate. What point is too long that we haven't contacted a candidate? What have you seen many sort of examples of where you think that's been set well, or is there any more guidance that's sort of come from that, from what powers that be?
Yeah, well, for me, certainly is, would the candidate be surprised to hear from you? Okay, so if the candidate would go, I don't know who you are, or I don't know who your company is, if you do a litmus test and go, yeah, right, actually, is that candidate that we registered 2 years ago, are they going to have any clue who we are? Then that for me is the test. So you get rid of people's. If you go that far back and you go, yeah, no longer are these candidates going to be aware of us, then you get rid of them, and that will change per recruitment function. It will change per business. There is no hard and fast rule for this, Steve. It's what can be deemed reasonable. What isn't reasonable is to hold on to details, candidate information for so long that it becomes inaccurate, and that is something that based on what the ICO have put out, and I was at a GDPR event in Edinburgh last year, where the Scottish ICO representative did say the one area that they will come down hard on is inaccurate information. So if you're giving information about people that's incorrect and not giving people the opportunity to update their information with you, then that's certainly a bigger risk, and that's really important to us in a recruitment context, because we can be holding not only incorrect contact information, but we can be holding incorrect job preferences, incorrect CVs, or incorrect whatever it might actually be. And particularly as enterprise, even in agency, which is where most of my experience from a technology perspective has been, we had years of holding lots of information that we thought we needed to hold, but actually we didn't. You know, that's it. There's a lot of stuff there that we shouldn't. So it's about that next thing, Claire, to get back to what you're saying. What, you know, in terms of the type of in terms of the approach and how far back you should go, you should probably then look and go, well, how long have we been collecting irrelevant information about people? Are we holding information? You know, for example, you know, there was a phase in time where legislation on recruitment businesses in particular was quite tight around identity. So are you holding passports, driving licenses, all that kind of stuff? Now, that's a massive risk. That's a different kettle of fish altogether. If you're holding sensitive personal information like that, then you should have had consent. You need consent for that. You can't rely on legitimate business interests.
This is a sort of like I think it's one of the most basic questions, but it's also as well kind of one of the most relevant and I think pertinent. If a candidate that you've been engaged with then sends in all of their personal details as well as their CV, and to Colin's point as well, you know, it contains things like references, union stuff, any kind of really kind of like third level degree identification data.
Yeah.
What do you do with that? Like, what's the process needed to be? And again, this will be different for temp contract and perm kind of references and frequency, but also as well, like, what part of that information needs to be redacted? And is that I suppose that third party involvement of our systems and service providers? What do they do, or what should they be doing within those systems to help us protect that identity?
Yeah, absolutely. So you know, during your process of preparing for GDPR, you should be checking and looking at what information you actually, you know, need to be retaining about candidates. And as you quite rightly said, that will differ depending on the business, depend on the team, depending on the type of role that you actually recruit for. You know, I've had a huge amount of experience in compliance with financial services recruitment, contractor packs of, you know, literally 60, 70 pages before in the past. So it will be different. I think you need to first of all make sure each person knows what information they retain, that is retained about them, that is processed, and the reason for that. So it's not that you can't hold that information. It's making sure that the candidate, prospective candidate, is aware that you're holding and processing that information about them. You need to ensure that sensitive information, you know, you will need consent for that. You know, legitimate interest isn't sufficient. You need to have consent to hold that data about the candidate, and you should have a CRM or ATS provider that can take care of that for you. Okay, if you don't, then you need to find a new CRM and ATS.
Clearly not the one that Colin's got.
Do you have a quick word with your CRM provider? No, I do know from a specific CRM perspective that there is an amount of work that's already been undertaken from definitely the most reputable CRM suppliers out there, where they have got an ability to encrypt and also put protection over data at rest, and also provide those routes for individuals to find their data trail and present back all of the data that's held on them. So from an individual's perspective, wanting to see their data and what you hold on them, those requests need to be kind of followed through and delivered, and you should obviously not charge as well those individuals, which is new in the GDPR rules. Whereas before, I think you could charge somebody a tenner, which would then make them go away and, you know, forget that they even asked. But now you've obviously got to provide a lot of visibility and transparency around the data that you hold. I kind of I've seen Stephen's popped up a couple of times with a load of questions around job boards. We're not.
You say loaded questions.
I think they're loaded. We obviously, you know, the job boards play a massive part in the whole process of candidate attraction, an application process. And from a job board sort of tracking perspective, I know, you know, again, from that perspective, I know that source coding can give you that ability to see where the application came from in the first place, and that can come through and append to the application into your CRM. But in terms of job boards, I don't know if you guys have any kind of experience as well in terms of what's the job board's responsibility for that data flow?
I think Job boards need to firstly and foremost take care of themselves and make sure that they've got the right data privacy policies in place that protects candidates. And I have got some experience with job boards in the past who have treated candidate data pretty poorly and have not put in the right amount of security in order to protect. So there's some really good ones. I'm not going to name names, but there's some really good ones and there's some really bad ones. So if I was using a job board today, then I would be expecting to see within their privacy policy something explicit around, a candidate should expect that if they, apply to a job board or if they load their CV onto a job board, then the candidate should expect that CV could go to a recruiter who's contracted with that job board. Now, once that goes, that CV, for example, if I download a CV from a CV database of a job board, once I get that as the recruiter, then the job board could notify the candidate that Billy McDermott from Candidate ID has downloaded their CV and that they should expect a follow-up. But also as the recruiter, it's my responsibility to if I'm actually going to use that candidate and do anything other than simply review and delete it, then I need to let the candidate know that I am processing their data. So, and bear in mind, as recruiters, we've got that 30-day gap there. We don't, you could have a process in place, guys, where your CRM or your ATS or your Broadbean, whatever it might actually be, can deal with that for you, where it can do that automatic notification to the candidate. But otherwise, you can have a process in play for job boards where if you're taking information from a job board, you then decide not to use it. You just then need to make sure that you're deleting it and then not using it again. So it's just having that purge process, and having seen many recruiters' inboxes in my time, I know that purge process will be really, really difficult for recruiters to stick to. Email providers can support that through their security and audit tools, as well as their retention policies. But it's a big argument for me, actually, Claire, to start using, if an agency or a recruitment team isn't using something like Broadbean to manage their applicants. If they're still getting applications into their inbox, they should be moving away from that process completely. There's probably as well an argument for to then start looking at something like Pocket Recruiter or Dijkstra for parsing the CV databases themselves, because actually you've got a direct connection instead of downloading CVs from a database and then CVs sitting on desktops and sitting in downloads folder and all that stuff that we know happens. So you should use technology isn't the solution to your data privacy challenges. Technology is part of it. It's an enabler, it's a supporter, and there are lots of great people out there who can help join up the processes for you.
Yeah, no, the process piece, I think, is probably the bit that kind of causes much, I suppose, most questions, because so many parts of the recruitment process are handled throughout an agency. And from my time, I got involved in the very beginning, where I'd set the job boards and kind of set the LinkedIn process there at one end, and then the recruiters and the resources would go off and work the whole chain. And then you've kind of got your clients and candidates in at the other side. So from your perspective, and I noticed through the playbook as well, and this is certainly something that I would advise, setting up a cross-functional team to actually be able to elevate all of the questions that you might have just from a day-to-day basis, and provide that sort of framework, if you like, for answering all of these questions, or even investigating, like, what should you be doing? What should your policies actually include? What sort of process breaks do you need to put in place? Or even where do you need to challenge your process as well? So I noticed that as well in the playbook. That was really, really good advice. So of those people that are online at the moment, do you understand, I suppose it's a basic question, but from a cross-functional team perspective, is there anything that Billy can do to highlight who should be on that team and what their roles should be? Well, no questions coming through at the minute. Maybe we will get some later on. So we talked. Yeah. I've got another question around risk, Billy, because I like the risk element.
Go for it.
There's going to be quite a few people out there that are going, well, you know, we're only a couple of months away now from the actual hammer coming down. Should we just wait and see what happens, or do we really need to start acting now?
You should be acting now. I simply think it's really. If you're the type of person who's, I'm sorry, I was going to use words that I shouldn't use.
We're not
you won't be the first or last, Billy, on this program. Don't worry about it.
Look, we all.
I'm the host, for goodness sake.
we all, you know. Actually, there's two aspects to this, right? The first thing is, you know, if you're the type of recruiter, whether that's in-house or agency, who ignores the data privacy of your candidates, and you A, shouldn't be in recruitment, and B, I hope you get exposed for what you are. We should be putting candidates' data at the core of what we do. Put the shoe on your own foot. How would you feel if your data wasn't being treated with respect? How would you feel if your data was being transferred from third party to third party to third party? If your information was being processed without you knowing? The second thing is, you know, let's be realistic about, you know, the ICO will do a great job, and the ICO have got right now bigger fish to fry. We all know what's going on with Cambridge Analytics and Facebook, and that's only going to become bigger. But that said, the ICO will be, you know, proactively dealing with any complaints that are coming. They're not going to be proactively going out and auditing recruitment businesses. That's not going to be the case. But ultimately, it might only take 2 or 3 complaints from candidates for your business or your team to be exposed to the hassle and to the grief of an ICO visit. And I've never been subject to one, actually, and I don't know what it entails. I certainly don't think it'll be as dramatic as them turning up to Cambridge Analytics, you know, offices with FBI-style jackets that happened on Friday night. But actually, for me, it just as a you know, as a manager, as someone in a business who has got revenue responsibility, has had revenue responsibility for 13 years, do I want the distraction of that happening? Do you know, that in itself is a risk. It will take people time to deal with these inquiries and then to put in the actions that are required. So you should be doing it now. Do you know, just get ahead and actually getting even to a basic level of compliance, you know, being a bit pragmatic about it, you know, will reduce the chances of you know receiving these complaints. You know, just do the basics. Regularly contact your candidates, give them the opportunity to update their information with you, give them the opportunity to opt out. Make sure your privacy policy is on the website. Make sure all your staff are trained on how to deal with data subject access requests, and make sure that an audit's kept against the candidates of all the activity that takes place. Make sure an audit's kept of staff training. Do you know, these things. Oh, and make sure you've actually got a data protection handbook in the office that's visible and can be seen. If you take those basic steps, if there is complaints, then I think the ICO will come in and go, great, you're doing as much as you really can. There always is going to be, let's be honest, we work in recruitment, there are always going to be unhappy candidates, because it's a really personal thing for candidates to do. Candidates will, you know, complain not because of a data privacy breach. They'll complain pretending that it's because of a data privacy breach, or what they think is a data privacy breach, but it's probably because of a shit service for only 6 months.
Yeah, that's right.
They didn't get an answer.
Well, they didn't get a job. Yeah, they didn't get a job they wanted, and they're angry. Yeah, these are the things you've got to protect yourself for. But the thing you just talked about there, Billy, before we go, because there are some great questions. I know Claire's probably got onto those, but I think there's a real mindset shift though that has to happen inside the majority of recruitment agencies, which is to move away from that thought process that all this stuff, you know, somebody to manage the data, somebody to do auditing, somebody to make sure that we've got all this stuff in. As soon as recruitment agencies have a non-fee earner, and that's technically what that person is considered to be, they clam up at the thought that somebody won't produce income, but they're going to cost us 30 grand a year in salary or whatever. I mean, it's a big mindset shift, isn't it? But it's essential, isn't it? I mean, this is, and I think we'll come on to the opportunity elements of this as well, right? I mean, once we've dealt with a couple of these questions here, because I think this is a fear. This whole process of GDPR management for recruitment agencies is a fear. It's absolutely got to be if managed correctly. So,
of course.
But it does require a bit of a mindset shift.
And that comes to having the right people, though, as well as part of your team. Making sure that you've got. To be honest, would I put any agency recruiters into a GDPR team? Absolutely not. I wouldn't do that. Certainly, and this is in no way reflective of the wonderful recruiters that I've worked with over the past 13 years. But I just wouldn't, because actually I want them to be revenue generating, or I want them to be contacting candidates and sourcing it and doing that. You get the right people who understand, who can get their head around the concepts, who can actually implement it, who have got the authority to implement it, and who have the buy-in from the senior stakeholders to implement it, but the right people to then communicate and train the team, and then importantly monitor compliance with it. And I think that's something that was drummed into me actually a long time ago. You need to, whether it's compliance, it doesn't matter what legislation it is, you need to monitor compliance and then take action, address training needs. But you also do, and this is where the negative side of it, you need to build it into your disciplinary policy to make sure that if there are any data privacy issues, then that they're dealt with by your HR people in the right way.
And you need to create that stream of consciousness inside the business that it's always something you have to think of, because although it's not a recruiter's job to do all the back-endy stuff of it, it is their job to ensure that they're dealing with candidates and communicating in the correct way in every part of that attraction process, clearly.
Yeah, I agree. I think it should be part of an opportunity for an agency to really, kind of embed their best practices and their best practice brand that they want to portray. And, those agencies that stand up and go, actually, we really do care about our candidates, and we've got this brilliant candidate experience. If GDPR isn't part of that, then I don't think they could actually fulfill the best practice candidate experience, because it's got to be fundamentally about the care that they take over that entire relationship. And whether that's representing a candidate from the very beginning of their relationship, or even just finding the best candidates for those jobs with their client engagement and client relationships, it's got to be the care of that data. And for me, it's one of those first things that I kind of ask and look at is, how are they treating me from not knowing who I am to literally processing my data? And I've got nightmare stories of actually being part of an organization, an agency, where I got a call from a recruiter in the office that I was in on the floor above. And he was trying to place me for a job because he found my CV on our internal system. But he was trying to place me for a job. And he didn't realise that I was the person standing behind him by the time we finished our phone call. For a job that
I'd be more worried, Claire, if he knew it was you and he was trying to place you into another job.
Trying to get rid of me. But there's also look from a recruiter's perspective. I know there are so many recruitment agencies out there that have brilliant roles and brilliant recruiters doing those jobs of a fantastic relationship development manager, or, kind of representing candidates and clients to the best of the ability. But you've put too many steps into that recruitment process on top of a recruiter, and something's going to give. And the thing that gives 9 times out of 10 is the service quality. And that's what causes these kind of complaints. So yeah, I totally get it. Thank you, Kim. I'm all right.
Let's LZ started was a really good look at stream around the sort of business across boundaries stuff, but also Brexit and UK leaving the Brexit, if that Brexiting and leaving the EU doesn't make any difference, does it, Billy?
No, but it's an important point. So the first thing is that the government have indicated that they will absorb this, and the data protection legislation is going through Westminster at the moment, actually, in terms of the adoption of that. It's in committee just now. We don't expect any changes, any material changes. There will be occasional, little things, but there won't be anything material. But it is important to pay attention to your local country and the local information authority there and government, and pay attention. There may be some changes to it. It won't get any looser because you need to adopt a minimum standard, but it might get tighter. The other thing just on that, on geography, is remember, it doesn't matter whether you're based as a recruiter in the UK or not. If you're dealing with the data of European citizens, then GDPR applies to you.
Yeah.
Now quite how the enforcement of that will work, then I don't know, but that's just something to remember.
Yeah. So what you're basically saying, you could be a recruitment agency or a company based in Brazil, but if you're running a project that involves German candidates because you're trying to ship somebody from Germany over to Brazil or whatever, the law applies to that company in Brazil.
Correct. 100%.
Yeah. And that's obviously very relevant to that being in South Africa.
I wanted to kind of bring it back to the client side of things. So there's been loads of recruiters out there that are kind of filling in tenders or part of managed service provisions and all that sort of lovely stuff that goes beyond the direct hiring kind of model. Where do the recruiters who operate within those spaces need to think about, the kind of crossover of data protection and the handling of those candidates and data? There's lots of firms that are literally, kind of amassing data pools and candidate pools and then putting them through these very fast processes. What sort of considerations do they need to kind of be aware of?
I think if you're a third-party provider providing mapping services, you first of all, you need to contractually make sure that your relationship with the client that you're dealing with has got that data privacy provision to be clear that with regards to that data, you are acting on behalf of the client. So you are in fact acting as the data controller. So it's something that we do as a business. We've got a research team here at Candidate ID as well. So if you are contractually carrying that out on behalf of your clients, just make sure that it's part of your agreement, and so that everyone's clear in terms of what data you're actually going to be gathering. Minimization is key. Actually, data minimization is key right across data privacy. You should only be holding as much information as you really need. So you need to be, if you're carrying out that service, then make sure that it's as minimal information as you can potentially get away with. You also though need to be clear in terms of where does your responsibility start and where does your responsibility stop in terms of the process? Because as soon as that changes, then you may have different obligations. So as soon as someone, as soon as you handle CVs, right, for example, then that takes you into consent territory, and you need to be more careful around what your processes are. So you need to map out what information you're actually processing. You need to map out at what stages of the process are you actually involved. If you're talking about technology providers, then just make sure that again, most clients are going to use technology providers. They're going to use the software themselves, so they are the data controller. But they need to, the client will then need to make sure that the technology company actually knows what GDPR is all about, and is taking reasonable precautions. So they have a subject matter expert within the business that their data privacy standards are up to scratch, and they're taking care of all the security stuff as well. Because let's not forget, a big part of GDPR is about security and making sure that you're holding data, in an encrypted manner when it's at rest, when it's in flight, that it's encrypted, and two, that it's been held on servers that are actually worth something and not just being held on a USB data stick somewhere. So there's that whole security aspect of it. You've got Cyber Essentials and ISO 27001 for anyone who wants to take a look at that. That's Cyber Essentials is a great starting point if you're unsure about what should I need to do to make sure that all my candidate data has been held securely.
Good.
I think we're hitting Pim's the clock by the looks of this.
I think it was, wasn't it?
That's quite. I was thinking, are we there yet? No. Just looking at the time, 'cause we've got 45 minutes in. There was one other question on the question list, which is around blockchain and GDPR. Now, and I will self-confess, I know nothing, and I read absolutely nothing about blockchain. For me, it sounds like some kind of toilet trouble. What's going on? Is this even relevant? Is this question?
I'm trying to find the exact question, but
I'll give it to you. Hold on a second. I can bring this up. This is when my...
Is it down the bottom?
No?
Is it?
Okay. So what, Eddie, to address it whilst that question.
Yeah, Joe asked, tell me about GDPR and blockchain.
Okay, so blockchain is a great way of receiving verification that someone is who they say they are, and it's a great way of having that audit trail of exactly who's done what and when. So there's a great provider that I'm aware of, Appy, Gary Mackay. He's a great Scottish guy based in North Inverness and also in London. But their blockchain solution for recruitment is verification of contractors, so that actually a candidate just needs to have an Appy profile, and that will verify their work history, their education history, their referees. So it's that kind of one-stop shop that actually does anything. There is, in theory, I'm sure there's probably someone out there working on this at the moment. There would be a way of utilising blockchain so that a candidate is notified, like what Stephen has said earlier, notified whenever a job board, sends out a CV, or whenever a recruiter downloads a CV. So for me, that security aspect of blockchain, that audit trail of it, and that independent verification of it, if someone can get that right, then it'll work really, really well. But other than having a loose understanding of blockchain and speaking to a couple of providers, I am no blockchain expert in any way, shape, or form.
Me either.
Well, thank you for that explanation, because now I feel a little bit more educated. We just got one more question.
Oh, I've got one very, very silly but very simple question that needs addressing. That's all. But no, you do it, because I think you might be a bit more in continuity in your question.
Okay. It's Colin's question on the Q&A, and this keeps disappearing. So my technical
let me see if I've
capabilities are. He's talking about. Here we go. So Callum asked. Sorry. If we were to get in touch with the database and reach out to them via email to say that we're holding their details under legitimate business interests, and that they don't reply, what should happen then?
This will come down to your appetite for risk. Okay, so I know some clients who, if they don't receive a reply, they will purge the candidate's records. I know some clients who will retain it on the basis that they've been able to see that the candidate's engaged with that email, that they've opened that email, and then haven't taken a choice to unsubscribe and to exercise their rights under the GDPR. And I know some clients who will just retain it anyway, and who will only delete information if the candidate requests that deletion. I tend to be in the middle. I tend to say, if you can prove engagement, if you can prove that a candidate's opened and engaged with the content and hasn't opted out, then you can continue processing that data until the candidate says otherwise. You shouldn't. For me, you've got no justification of holding candidates' information if you can't at least prove that they're engaging with content. And that's where having a really shit-hot content strategy, giving candidates the right information at the right time, is really, really important. Understanding what information your candidates do actually want to receive, but also automating a lot of that process, because we'll come back to what we were talking about earlier. You don't want recruiters spending their time doing that. So you should have a technology solution, whether that's Candidate ID or another, that will automate that for you. So automate engagement, automate the way that candidates receive content, automate the type of content that candidates receive based on their preferences and based on their engagement.
I see that more and more as well as the marketeer's job within an agency environment. It's that candidate attraction and engagement part. And like you say, using the great tools that we've got available at the moment, really does just make, you know, one marketeer like an army of that sort of pre-recruitment resourcing kind of team. And I think that the whole sort of digital transformation that agencies are going through at the moment is really great, and definitely stands everybody in great stead. So yeah, that's kind of it from me. There was one more point I think Elzette just kind of posted up, that if someone gives you over their business card at an event, and I do this all the time, I expect somebody to get in touch with me if I've given them my card. So that's, for me, my personal opinion is that I'm giving you consent to contact me. So yeah, I agree with Colin saying that that's simply not true.
And remember, you do have other legislation as well. So we've got the privacy and e-communications regulations, PECR, PECR. They are going to be superseded by e-privacy shortly as well. I think the expectation is that will be brought in line with the GDPR. You know, but at the moment under PECR, from a business to business marketing perspective, you can soft opt out, and that's something, as long as you can demonstrate that there's a reasonable chance that person is interested in your products or services. That in effect is pretty much the same as legitimate interest under the GDPR. So why wouldn't they just bring it all together? I personally think, without being close to what's going on in the committee rooms and in Brussels on this stuff and the working parties that go on, it would seem reasonable to bring anything together. But what you should do, Elzette, is make sure that the person get the opportunity to opt out and say, no, please don't contact me about this stuff anymore. That's what you should have. So so I'm looking, Colin, I was reading something about putting a card in a bowl for the
the alternative way of distribution.
And hopefully we get to win something brilliant and beautiful.
Yeah. And can we just deal with the one thing, because we still get it in our email boxes? Should we be asking people to opt in or opt out, Billy?
My view is you're going to kill your database if you do that. So if you're going down the opt-in and consent route, my view is you don't need to. Your lawyers might think differently, but that I don't see any databases that are healthy after an opt-in.
There's actually
it's a very trim cut, isn't it?
Yeah. If someone can show me one that is,
their entire database and started all over again. So literally for every campaign they work on, they only have the kind of population of really engaged candidates, in that pool. They don't ever hold data. Do you think we're going to go down that route more and more? Do you think that this is it for CRMs?
We've got clients that do that. We've got clients that work on that campaign basis, and that's their choice. I think they're making life really hard for themselves. I think they're being, I think you can combine. I love the fact that it is fresh and it's always good data, and that's fine. And in fact, we do it on our research side. We don't recycle data. Actually, we do it. But if I was working on if I was working in an agency, for example, doing that, then I'm making life really hard for myself. It really depends on your business model.
Yeah, there's two
in some places. In our team, that's what we do. That's what needs to happen. But in other cases, I think if any recruitment team or recruitment agency, the normal recruitment business or agency does that, they're making life really hard for themselves.
I think it's often the difference between search and contingent. I think if you're a marketplace recruiter, because you're the bomb in the accountancy space in Manchester or whatever, you want to be known to have a pool of instant candidate. People pay you fees because as an agency who's hot and who's not, and when they're available and when they're not. That's the data privilege of recruitment agencies, why they get paid fees. I think I know of arguments where people have done exactly what Claire's talking about, because they're search recruiters and they work campaign by campaign. And when they've completed that campaign, the candidates of that campaign probably may not be relevant for another campaign. So that's where there's been an argument, I think, around that as well, which I think is an interesting point. I think I don't quite get it myself, but it is, I've seen that too. In fact, the first people who's talked to me about this last year, recruitment agency said, you know what, I'm just going to delete everything and start from scratch as well. So there's obviously an appetite for that as well, but it's just I don't know if that's really a sustainable way of dealing with this challenge. I don't think it really is a sustainable way. But,
I laughed when Wetherspoons announced, that early doors on GDPR that, a good non-recruitment example. We're going to delete our entire database and just start again. Actually, it probably wasn't. The marketer was probably using that as an excuse because they probably weren't getting any ROI from it. So they're going, well, that's fine. It's not working.
I don't think I've ever been into a Wetherspoons because they marketed to me. I think it's usually because I'm about 3 or 4 pints in and don't care which pub I'm going in anymore.
Normally ours is because it's right next door to the restaurant that we're going.
Or that, yeah, that's right. Staggering distance.
And they do do really good deals on curry and a beer.
Is it Tuesdays or Thursdays? Curry night.
Thursdays round us, but yeah,
it's really good actually. Yeah, okay. We've just weaved Wetherspoons back in.
On our brand.
Yeah, it's amazing curry. It's about £5 and you get a whole bunch. And in fact, I had a breakfast with Wetherspoons this morning as well. It was very nice. So yeah, all right, we've reeled Wetherspoons back into credibility now, and it's about £1.98 a pint as well for some of the beers. So even better. So okay, look, brilliant. Well, look, Billy, thank you. That's been brilliant. We've sort of overrun what we normally do, but I think this is a deep subject. There's lots of really great questions, and thanks for that. Lots of different ones as well, which I think was good, as because we see a lot of the same stuff on this quite a lot. So it's quite nice to try and approach it from other angles. So thanks, Billy, for representing Candidate ID, but also representing the goodness in recruitment. Thank you, Claire, for being the more knowledgeable half of our partnership when it comes to this sort of stuff. Claire's business is Ambush, by the way, am-bush.com.
Bush,
so if you want to read some stuff that Claire's doing, then please do. Thanks, everybody. I think we're going to be back next on the 15th, 16th. It's going to be 3 weeks, I think, and not 2 weeks because of Easter holidays. But look out for where our next shows are going to be. I think we're going to look at content and we're going to look at experience and events and all that kind of stuff as well. So we're going to have some good stuff. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate your input, and take care. Have a good day, everyone.
All right, take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.